All right, everybody. I want to talk about what it's been like my first year with Freightworks transportation. I don't typically use notes in my videos, but I wanted to make sure that the things I had on my mind were mentioned. At this point, it's probably just over a year, but I started with them in February of 2020. And 2020 was a rough year. I mean, for I'd say most employers, it was a lot of figuring things out they hadn't had to deal with before and things like that. So depending on when you're watching this video, a lot could have changed. That goes without saying anytime, but you have things that happened in 2020 that a company as new as Freightworks, and they're only 8 years old, 9 years at this point, hadn't had to deal with before. So keep that in mind during my my review. Let's get to it. So let's talk about the good. Let's cover the good first. Just starting out, you make decent money with Freightworks, depending on where you're coming from. I had less than 1 year experience when I started with Freightworks, and their website says there's a 2-year minimum, but they hired me anyway. I had a clean MVR. I had clean DOT inspections. At that point, even 8 months in, I already had 2 DOT inspections, both of which I passed, and other things I guess was taken into consideration. I was referred by another driver, so all that stuff played into it. But they had decent pay, so I was coming from 43 cents a mile. Again, I'm recording this in March of 2021, so if you're watching this years from now, who knows what the mileage rate is, but as far as the national average, but I was making 43 cents a mile where I came from, and they started me out at 50 cents a mile on a dedicated customer, but it wasn't dedicated like A to B, same place all the time. I was on what was called the Chemours account, and that was, it's essentially, if you dig deep enough, it's DuPont, or it used to be DuPont. Either way, it's paint chemicals, it's hazmat. It's hazmat, non-hazmat, but it's chemicals nonetheless. So that account paid 50 cents a mile, whereas if you just took, that was a regional account too, so it's supposed to be Southeast Regional. Southeast Regional to them is you pick up in the Southeast and deliver to the Northeast. Now, sometimes you are delivering, you might pick up in, let's say Mississippi and then deliver to Florida or something like that. But most of the time you're picking up in the South and you're delivering to New York or Pennsylvania, Jersey. And so I guess, I don't know Southeast Regional, what they're going by there, but you're picking up in the South and delivering to the North. That paid 50 cents a mile. If you went with OTR, which is all the lower 48 states, you made 48 cents a mile. And apparently the reason they do that is because you have, you get more miles. You get more miles in a week than a regional driver gets. So that's why they pay 48 cents a mile. I don't like that. That's actually one of the cons, one of the things I don't like. Because I think it should be 50 cents across the board if it's going to be 50 cents at all, right? The 48 cents for OTR, I don't really care for that. The account that I started back in May of 2020, so I only did the Chemours account for like 3 months. And then I started on the Dole account that you watched a video of recently, where I showed my Northeast run. Well, that run paid 57.5 cents a mile, and it got 24 to 2,500 miles a week. with detention pay and everything else, I was seeing on average about $1,530 a week, something like that. That was my steady average. We very rarely saw a fluctuation in that amount. Only if a load got canceled, and sometimes it did. But I'll get into that in a minute too. Cancellations and loads and frequency of loads and things like that. So I'm still talking about the pay because if it was important to me when I came to Freightworks to go up, in pay. I didn't leave Millis because they made me mad necessarily. I was just tired of sitting on waiting lists, and that is not something you have to worry about with Freightworks. So circling back to canceled loads and things like that, even if a load cancels, they'll find you a load. They'll get you something. The only time that I saw and talked to anybody about there being a delay or a long wait was when they were in Washington State or like Oregon, and this was during the brink of COVID, and the ports were closed, and there were some drivers that sat up there for a while. I didn't have to. I never went up there. I did go to California a few times, Southern California, but I didn't have to deal with the northwest part of the country. And that apparently was the only weak spot that we had, because everywhere else I went, there was not an issue. So they have frequent freight, plenty of it, in my opinion, especially compared to where I came from. I never sat waiting on a load from dispatch. So there was never an issue with them paying me what they said they were going to pay me. So I can't complain about that. And in that regard, I can't recommend them enough. Plenty of miles, and they always paid me what they said they were going to pay me every time. Benefits. So their benefits for a solo driver are pretty good. $46 a week, I believe, is what I paid. But with the real kicker, and what really tripped me up the most, in a good way, is that $46 a week was only a $500 deductible. I'm not sure what kind of benefits you have, but in North Carolina, most employers friends I know, places I've worked before, you got a $2,000 or more deductible. But for that $46 or might be $43 a week or whatever it is, you're at a $500 deductible. And I'm tripping up right now because I can't remember exactly if that 46 included like the dental and the vision or whatever, but that's anywhere between $3 and $5 a week. But just call it $50 a week for all the health benefits is with a $500 deductible. Now they do have an option where they pay your health benefits, but that's a $4,000 deductible. So you have no medical insurance you pay for, but you pay for it. I mean, it's a $4,000 deductible, guys. I mean, but they offer it. So that there it is. They offer it. Can't knock them for offering it. However, a family plan is quite a bit more. You're looking at about $1,000 a month, somewhere in the ballpark of $1,000 a month, between $800 and $1,000 for a family plan. Now again, by the time you watch this video, they could have changed their carrier. And as I remember it, earlier this year, they were discussing there being a change in the health benefits for the good. So hopefully the family plan gets lower, because it really is probably the most expensive family plan that I've seen and heard of. The people at Freightworks, all of them, from safety to operations, even maintenance for the most part. And I'm gonna talk about maintenance in a minute, but everybody's so good-natured. Now, I will tell you before you go to work here, something you should know. They are, I'm gonna say, religious in nature. They have a religious background. The owner is very religious, but it doesn't matter where you're coming from or whether you believe any of that or have a religion whatsoever and believe anything. They don't push it on you. There's no indoctrination or anything like that going on. But you can see that they act different. They can act they act differently, and they don't really get wound up, because you know how truck drivers can be. There's a couple guys I know that did get upset about some things that were going on, you know, bad information given, so on and so forth. And I would ask every time, say, well, what do they say? How they react? And every time they never respond with anger, hardly ever, or not that I know of. If you're watching this and you are a Freightworks employee and they've yelled at you or something like that, then I never experienced it. And I don't know anybody else that has, so that's where I'm speaking from. So they're good people, and they always do what they say they're going to do. Well, most of the time they do what they say they're going to do. And the little caveat there is, when I first started working there, they talked about equipment. And their equipment's old. It's just not good. The equipment is simply not good. For the solo drivers. Now, the solo drivers all have like 2015, 2016 trucks. Now, I'll be hypocritical if I didn't tell you that, because I had so many breakdowns, me and my dispatcher had a conversation, and it wasn't a threatening conversation. I didn't say, I'm going to walk if you don't do X, Y, Z. I mean, I didn't want to leave because I was breaking down. Because I like my dispatcher. I like him a lot. He's one of the best, and he's young. He hasn't been doing it for very long, but he is fantastic. So him and I had a conversation, and he worked out with the fleet manager, and they got me a new truck. They got me a 2020 Mack Anthem, and y'all have seen it in a couple of my videos. So we worked it out as far as my equipment goes, but I'm not going to not mention it because they worked it out for me, because there's still guys that break down all the time, over and over and over. And the teams, most of the teams, some of the teams also have old equipment, but most of the teams have brand new Volvos. And whether your opinion of a Volvo, it's irrelevant. Because if you have an International or a Freightliner or a Kenworth that's breaking down all the time, I'll take the Volvo. I don't mind Volvos, but I'm just saying, I don't care what it is as long as it works for me all the time. And I broke down 8 times in 6 months. I averaged more than 1 breakdown a month, and most of them were towable, necessary to tow, me overnight in a hotel room, get a rental truck for an undetermined amount of time. So I had to move all my stuff in and out of rental trucks so many times, and I told my dispatcher finally, I said, I'm done. I just cannot. We need to figure out how to get me moving where I'm not breaking down all the time. And I had 3 trucks. I had 3 trucks in 8 months. 3, all of them were Kenworth T680s. They have 16 Kenworth T680s at Freightworks that are garbage. They have the PACCAR engine, take that for what it's worth, not the Cummins, and it has a dead rear axle. If you don't know what a dead rear axle is, when you look at your drive axles, you have nothing powering the rear axle. It just rolls. It's just there to hold up the truck and roll. It's just terrible trucks. So they got me sorted, but the equipment itself is just not good. Now let me back up to when I said that they always do what they say they're going to do most of the time. When I first started, I was told from the person leading orientation, we just ordered 16 new Volvos for the solo drivers. Well, it's been over a year and I still don't see any of those new Volvos for solo drivers. They say that it has a lot to do with COVID and things like that. And I'll take that a little bit. But why we see, maybe not 16. They said their order got canceled. And I know Volvo was one of the ones that like completely shut down operations and took forever. Hell, I don't even know if they're back up and running now or not. But I see other companies like buying trucks, right? I see other companies. I know of people that work at smaller companies than Freightworks, and they're buying trucks. Freightliners, Peterbilts, Kenworths, Internationals, I don't care. Get some new stuff in there where your old stuff is. Stop being married to this one brand. I mean, when I had that, there was one Kenworth that I had that it was something like $17,000 while I was in it in repairs. 17, maybe 20,000 in repair, and I'm not exaggerating. It was just one thing after another. And y'all seen my breakdown videos. I got a bunch of them because it kept happening. So they keep their word. They do what they say they're going to do. When they say they're going to pay you for something, you're paid for it. If you have to deal with something extra, not broke down, but I got stuck in the snow up in Pennsylvania. Freightworks doesn't have a weather policy per se. They don't pay for breakdown in the weather, but they do. But they did pay me. I think it was like $150 because I got stuck in the snow and I had to wait a day to deliver because we couldn't move. DOT had shut the roads down pretty much. So I got paid an extra $150 for that, and I didn't ask for it. They just did it. They're only 8 years old, and they have 125 trucks, and I think that's a part of their problem. It's a good problem to have, I guess, but I think that's a part of their problem. Is I think that they're going through growing pains because they've grown so rapidly. The owner of the company, his name is Josh Farmer. Ray Farmer is his father, and they're both great men as far as how they treat the drivers, how they treat supposedly the staff, because everybody seems to think highly of Josh and Ray. That's not to be confused with the recruiter Ray, by the way. If you're talking to Freightworks right now, Ray the recruiter, he's not. That's not the owner. Ray just so happens his name's Ray too. And anyway, so they've grown a lot in 8 years, 9 years, 125 trucks, and so I think that they're just having to deal with that. But they got a lot of breakdowns. Them daggone trucks break down all the time, and trucks do break down. I know that somebody's already just firing up that comment section. Well, you know, that's trucking. Trucks break down. Blah 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 blah. But like a Freightworks truck's natural habitat is broke down on the side of the road. That's its natural habitat, and that's the most frustrating part because they are really a good company to work for. They are. I've had no issues since I've been there. All right, so let's talk about maintenance for a minute, and this is pretty much me wrapping it up. Maintenance. I'm not going to say anything about individuals there because they were all good to me, like when I was coming through the shop, if I ever had to come through the shop. But there was so many times that I know one driver, for example, he got 2 trucks from the time I've known him. And he's on the run that I'm on, the Northeast run. And they delivered the truck to him at our yard. It was an old truck. It was just a truck somebody else had. And this driver, it just so happened, he used to be a diesel mechanic before he was a truck driver. So as soon as he gets the truck, he does a hellacious pre-trip on it. Well, it didn't take much I mean, didn't take a diesel mechanic to see this. It was just like spewing oil, just on the ground, just spewing oil. There was a leak in the airbag for the suspension. There was a knock, like there was a clear like knock in the engine. Power steering pump like squealed a little bit, not squealed, but it just did had like a hum to it. It just clearly wasn't right. But they gave him that truck. It came from the shop. And clearly a lot of corners were cut. He called him up, was like, hey, I got a leak, blah, blah, blah. He said, I'll just take it to the TA. And I feel like that was they relied a lot, because it is a smaller shop. They got two terminals, technically. They got two terminals. They got one main terminal in Rutherfordton, North Carolina. And they got another one out in, I want to just say Nevada. No. Yeah, it's in Nevada. It's in Reno. The Reno area. So, I think that they rely a lot on mechanics on the road just to do their stuff. Because they delivered this truck, oil leaks, leaking airbags, power steering seeming issues, and just somebody did not properly cover that truck when they got it turned in from a driver or whatever the case may be. They just wanted to hurry it on out to him, and that happened to him twice, and he had to pretty much say, no, I'm not driving this. And I know that there's a lot on technicians' plates, and there was a lot of times that there was work that needed to be done. This never happened to me, but I know people that took something to maintenance, and they were like, we're behind. Take it down the road. Take it to Love's. Take it to TA or whoever, because they were behind. And I know that you can't get blood out of a turnip. If it's not there, it's not there. If you don't have the manpower, if you don't have the time, I get it. But I think there needs to be an overhaul in the maintenance department at Freightworks. Too often are important things overlooked. I don't think the trucks are gone through by anyone that has a mindset of a driver. If it will crank, it will roll out of this shop, I think is probably the mindset. And I don't think it's a vindictive push or anything against the drivers. I just think that they're so busy that as long as it's cranking, as long as we can get it out of here and the tires are not all flat, well, and that's an example. When I got my first truck from them, I hadn't been there 3 days. My very first, I got in, there's TPS lights on, tire pressure sensor lights. I checked it out, and there was a tire that was entirely not beaded to the rim on my drive. The inside front drive was not beaded to the rim. I shook the whole tire. It just tells me that there's something not happening when they're looking over these trucks. You know what I mean? Because I asked somebody in the shop about it, and they were like, oh yeah, them TPS sensors are all bad and all this other stuff. And to be fair, the guy said, you mean look at it with you? And I'm like, nah, I believe you. And then I went and checked it out, and that was the problem. Somebody should have looked at it before I got it, right? So that's it. That's pretty much all I've got for them. I will say they did update the driver's lounge and the driver facilities. That kind of ties me back into them trying to do right by the drivers. They put pretty much like hotel room type things in there, so you could, instead of sleeping in a truck, if you don't want to sleep in a truck, there's like a full like bed. I think they're queen size bed. They're decent. I actually helped them put some of the stuff together at the terminal one day. So I hope this was helpful. If you're considering going to work at Freightworks Transportation, they're good people. You're not going to get in there and just be left high and dry by dispatch, safety, operations. But I think unless things have a drastic turnaround, a drastic change, you're going to probably feel a little shorted by the maintenance side. And it's not everybody on the maintenance side. I can't stress this enough. The people that I think are running the maintenance side are under pressure, and I think they're trying to just run on some shoestring budget on the maintenance side. And so I don't think any of it is on purpose, and they really do try to not short you. But anyways, I hope this is helpful. Even if this video is, if you're watching this video 5 years from now, feel free to shoot me a comment below, send me a message, shoot me an email. My email is at the very beginning of all my videos, on the Biggins Trucking screen, and bigginstrucking@gmail.com. But I'd love to help you out if you got any questions. Until next time, drive on, driver. And y'all stay safe out there.